OBS decided not to start streaming when I clicked the button the last time, and I had to restart it. But everything is working now. It looks like our preview is up and running. Mic is going out, so that is perfect. Let's go and get ourselves configured for the day. All right, so we're currently at a use case for inferior mutability mock objects. And if I remember correctly, we were part of implementing this entire thing here. So we'll need to open up our code too. I think we're in RefCell. Yep, that's exactly where we are. Perfect. Stacking, good morning. All right, so we've looks like the last thing we did was we had the new function. So if we take a look here, here's the new function, and the next is going to be our set value function. Clippy RFC got approved. Now it's in nightly to move its way into stable. How was it? I tried getting it working once on stream, and it just wasn't really working for me. But at the same time, I could also see like that may have been an experimental build, maybe it been with like something my setup. I don't know. Good morning, Miguel. It's a I mean, isn't it more than just a linter? Also, it's like a help, like a super help thing on steroids. All right, so we've implemented new. Now it's time for us to implement the set value function. We're going to take a mutable value to self and then the value, and we're going to set that value. It yelled at you because you are using a reference to a string from an example. Oh, that's funny. That's interesting. All right, so pub function set value. We're gonna take in a mutable reference to self, and we're also going to take a value which is type usize, right? What is value? Yeah. And what are we going to return? Absolutely nothing. So here we're going to set the value on self. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, previously you always needed Rust to be the nightly version to use Clippy. I'm really looking forward to it no longer being that way, which will be really awesome. So self.value equals value, that percentage of max. So then we're gonna do some different messages depending upon the size of this. So let's first start with, we're gonna set self.value equals value. Then we want the percentage of max. So that percentage max equals, so what are they doing here? So we're going self.value as a 64-bit float divided by self.max as, okay, so self.value value, but then we have to convert this to an F64 divided by self.max as F64. And then we're going to use these, which is, okay, so if we're greater than 75%, so if we're between 75 and less than 0.9. So what's really interesting, if we're greater than or equal to 1.0, I kind of feel like doing it opposite first. By saying like, hey, if we're greater than 1, if we're greater or equal to 1, you're over your quota. If we're greater or equal to 0.9, or we could do this one. No, I'm going to do the opposite first. I'm going to say like, okay, if we're greater or equal to 1, we're going to do error, you're over your quota. So self.messenger.send. All right, so if, what is it? Percentage of max is greater than or equal to 1. When you want 1.0 to be last, since they're less likely to be over the quota. Yeah, I know. I didn't like the way it looked. I think maybe I could do it. Maybe I could do it the other way better. So if percentage match is greater or equal to 0.75, and percentage of max is less than 0.9, because what we're doing right here is saying, okay, warning, you've used up over 75% of your quota. Okay, so self.messenger.send, warning, you have used over 75% quota. Now we want to go between that, so else if here it's going to be percentage of max is less than 1.0. And the idea of that I want to do that here is I don't want to have to like, this is really wordy and really hard to read in my mind. And what I want to do is I want to minimize the amount of checks per line to minimize the potential like math bugs that could be put into here. Okay, so messenger.send used up over 90%. Because if we get up here, we're in the 90% now, but not above this. So self.messenger.send, warning, have used 90% of your quote. And then else if percentage of max is greater than or equal to 1.0, and self.messenger.send. Is that some design principle I usually implement when my mind sounds the most logical order, not by some principle? Yeah, like, so there's a couple different philosophies around it. Like a traditional systems programming, like C-based, is to minimize, like to check first here. And if you don't have to check the rest of them, then like write your check in that way. So it's like, okay, well, this one won't work. And then you put the majority, like the maximum possibility of checks in there. I think I don't like this because it's so big and long, but I want to see if I can refactor this to be a little bit better after this. First error, you are over your quota. Oh, they're doing urgent. So urgent warning. And then this is error. You are over your quota. Okay, so that's all there is for right here. Let's get this working. Then I want to come back and see if I can refactor this just a tiny bit. One important part of this code is that the messenger trait has one method called send that takes an immutable reference to self and the text of the message. This is the interface our mock object needs to have. The other important part is that we want to test the behavior of the setValue method on the limit tracker. We can change what we pass in for the value parameter, but setValue doesn't return anything for us to make assertions on. We want to be able to say that if we create a limit tracker with something that implements the messenger trait and a particular value for max, when we pass different numbers for value, the messenger is told to send the appropriate messages. We need a mock object that, instead of sending an email or text message when we call send, will only keep track of the messages it's told to send. We can create a new instance of the mock object, create a limit tracker that uses the mock object, call the setValue method on limit tracker, and then check that the mock object has the messages we expect. Listing 1521 shows an attempt to implement a mock object to do just that, but the borrow checker won't allow it. It's a little bit of a hyper optimization. Yeah, I agree with that. And it's one of those things where if we take a look at how much speed we're actually saving, it's probably not worth it if we cause a bug in doing it. It would be much more obvious. It would obviously be much more valuable for our time if we were to spend less developer time on it than CPU time. But of course, that's like depending. We're not doing huge mathematical checks in here either. If we were doing like a gigantic, a big O of that's, not n log n, but like, n squared or something, and we did have large data sets together, then we'd have to probably keep track of it. But the question is that something we'd want to refactor to? All right, so let's take a look at this. So here's our test. We have mod tests, use super struct mock messenger, sent messages. Okay, so let's create this now. So we have our mock tests. Inside of our mock test, we want to use super. So use super. We'll grab everything there. Then we want to create our mock messenger structure. So struct mock messenger. It's going to be sent messages, which is going to be a vector. So send. Are these capitalized? No, they're not. So sent messages is a vec of. What are these? Strings. Now we see those are strings. I did not put strings into here. Okay, these are strs, so we're gonna have to convert those as well. Okay, so this is gonna take a vec string. We're gonna have to then implement send. Okay, so no, yeah, we're gonna have a string from here. So we want to implement a new for this and a send. And there's nothing crazy we need to do for here. So implement mock messenger. we're going to have a function new, which is going to take in absolutely nothing. And it's going to return a new mock messenger. And what are we going to do here? So inside of here, all we need to do is just return a mock messenger, sent messages. Oh, is it sent messages? Oh yeah, it's a colon. It's gonna be a new vec, which I guess I could just do as a vec new, and I need to tell it that this is gonna be a string. Don't forget, a string can do into a string, but a str cannot go into a string. I think you're right. Yeah, did I put this in the right place here? I don't think I did. Where do I want to put it? Is it here? Or actually, you don't seem to care, even though you're part of mock messenger. Okay, well, if you could figure that out, then I'm really happy. Okay. So we have our new here, which is the same as the new we have right here. Then we want to implement the message. So we're going to take in the message, which is this reference to stir. So function send is going to take a, well, it's going to have to be a mutable reference to self, isn't it? So mute to self. It's also going to take the message, which is a type reference to stir. Are we going to return anything? I don't think we return anything. Nope. So then we're going to have to add into here. So we're just going to push in the string from message. All right, sounds good. Self dot sent messages dot push string from, and this is going to be the message. All right, so we push that in there. Of course, like all these things are, you're not using them. That's just in preparation for our test. So now we can have our actual test. Go and create that function. It sends an over 75% warning message. All right, so we'll do the first one. So function, it sends over 75% message. Okay, perfect. So we're going to first create a new instance of the mock messenger, create our limit tracker, and pass in this mock messenger, because if we remember, when we create new, we take in a messenger and we take in a max usize, which it looks like we're setting this to 100, but then we're going to set the value to 80. So perfect. So we're going to set our mock messenger and create a new one. So let messenger equals mock messenger new. That'll give us a brand new mock messenger. Of course, we're not using that, so we need to now implement limit tracker. So let tracker equals limit tracker new, and this takes the messenger and it takes the max, which is in this case, let's just make it 100, just like they did. Then we can set the value, so that's going to be set value. So let tracker dot set value equals 80s. That will be between 75 and 90. You're upset. Mismatch types expected reference found struct test mock messenger. Did they want us? Oh yeah, it does need to be. Did we do new? It's gonna be a reference to type. How? Oh, 133%. Oh, that's small. Okay, never mind. I do want this to be bigger. Okay, so if we come back to here, we do need to pass this in as a reference. Right there. The trait-bound test mock messenger is not satisfied. The trait messenger is not implemented for tests. So I do need to add in that trait too. But I think that's not something they put in here, which I think is going to be the next thing we're going to do. Let tracker.set value expected one of. It's not a variable, it's just a call. Well, I think if we take a look at what we have here, so limit tracker new, mock messenger 100, limit tracker.set value 80, and then we can assert equal. You have let tracker.set. I have set underscore value. Oh, you're right. Let tracker. I didn't even notice that. Thank you, stacking. No method name set value found for type limit. Really? Public function set underscore value for limit tracker. Let's try it again. Tracker dot set value 100. Oh, 80. No method name set value for type limit tracker in the current scope. I think it might be because of the trait. So and then we're gonna have our assert equal the mock messenger sent messages dot length is 1. It's freaking out because it can't find the limit tracker struct. Really? Oh, right, because well, everything after this line is now like probably gonna be weird because it's having trouble here, and now it's like, well, everything is messed up. I mean, we can do the assert equal now, even though it doesn't really matter. Basically, assert equal, and then we want like the length of this tracker. So what is this? Tracker dot send messages. This isn't public, but it is in here. So tracker dot sent messages. Did we make that public? No, we didn't. Sent messages. Dot length. And we want this to be 1. But of course, that won't work because we've got other issues here. Let's go ahead and continue reading. This test code defines a mock messenger structure that has a sent messages field with a vec of string values to keep track of the messages it's told to send. We also define an associated function new to make it convenient to create new mock messenger values that start with an empty list of messages. We then implement the messenger trait for mock messenger so we can give a mock messenger to a limit tracker. In the definition of the send method, we take the message passed in as a parameter and store it in the mock messenger list of sent messages. In the test, we're testing what happens when the limit tracker is told to set value to something that is more than 75% of max value. First, we create a new mock messenger, which will start with an empty list of messages. Then we create a new limit tracker and give it a reference to the new mock messenger and a max value of 100. We call the set value method on the limit tracker with a value of 80, which is more than 75% of 100. Then we assert that the list of messages that the mock messenger is keeping track of should now have one message in it. However, there's a problem with this test. So, really, cannot borrow immutable field sent self.sent messages as immutable. I don't think that's the problem we're getting. Trait messenger is not implemented. Did they have a bug in this? We have to add in this trait. Because, like, yeah, we told it has to be a certain trait. So, what is that? I now have to remember how to... Oh, we do that up here, don't we? Because we have a public trait messenger and public trait messenger. This is a where I want to actually implement it in. I remember they talked about it, but let's do Rust add trait to struct. Is this an older one? This is 2013. That's too old. Maybe the book for advanced traits. Public trait iterator. Okay, so it's implement iterator for counter. Do I have to implement add for point? Okay. Do I have to then say I want to implement trait messenger for this one down here? So we have this send implement trait for struct fn required function. Right, okay. So I don't think, we don't want to put send in here. I think the problem is, I think the book is wrong in this case. I want to do this down here and say, implement messenger for mock messenger, and want to move this send down here. Okay, method send has an incompatible type for trait. Types differ in mutability. So this can't be self. Does it want us to make this mutable in the mock? Oh, wrong book. Oh no, we don't need to be mutable. Okay, that's nice. Where are we? Down here. You don't need to be mutable. You just need to be a reference to self, like that. Okay, so now no field sent messages on type limit tracker. Oh, because I don't want tracker, I want messenger. So messenger.sent messages. Okay, so now what are you upset about? Cannot borrow field self.sent messages of immutable binding as mutable. So you need to be mutable in here. Self.sent messages dot push. Is this need to be told that it's mutable. I'm wondering, like, oh, sent messages. There's nothing crazy going on here. Implement messenger for message. Function self. Yeah, this, we need to say that this is mutable, but it's not letting us do it. Like, the book isn't having us do that, which is a problem because that kind of needs to be a thing. I'm actually, okay, so how can we make this work? Can we say that it's mute up here? I think you got to the part where the book was now explaining that error. Is it? Let's actually run it then and see what error we get. So cargo run, or I guess it's a cargo build. Okay, I'm actually really curious about why that built and didn't have an error. I can do, maybe I can do this. Cargo test. There we go. Cannot borrowed field self.sent messages of immutable binding as mutable. Is that the error that we're supposed to be getting right now? Okay, you're right. We're good now. We can't modify the mock messenger to keep track of the messages because the send method takes an immutable reference to self. We also can't take the suggestion from the error text to use mute self instead, because then the signature of send wouldn't match the signature in the messenger trait definition. Feel free to try and see what error message you get. One thing that I do notice here is that I had to implement messenger for mock messenger and put this function in here. Because this doesn't actually do that. This is just a interface. So I actually feel that that's a little bit of a bug. I'm kind of gonna want to add that in. So let's come down here. Let's open up the README just so that I don't lose this. Okay, so documentation fixes for book is going to be chapter 10. Where is it? Oh, I didn't even notice this. It does. Implement messenger for mock messenger. Never mind. It is good. Never. False alarm. I didn't read it when I first saw it. Okay, so let's go back into chapter 15 and RefCell. And let's continue on and forget that I completely didn't notice what I was supposed to do there. Okay, we can't modify this. This is a situation in which interior mutability can help. We'll store the sent messages within a RefCell T, and then the send message will be able to modify sent messages to store the messages we've seen. Listing 1522 shows what that looks like. So, okay. Config test, mod tests. So we're going to need to bring in standard cell RefCell. I noticed that we were going to bring this into test. So standard cell RefCell. Use standard cell. So there's a bunch of them here. Ooh, ref mute too. RefCell, okay. Then we have our struct messenger. We have our struct mock messenger. Sent messages is going to be a RefCell of vec string. Okay, so instead of just vec string here, it's going to be go ahead and get rid of this. This is going to be a RefCell of type vec, which itself is of type string. That. We implement mock messenger, function new mock messenger. Mock messenger sent messages is a new RefCell, so RefCell new. So RefCell new, but inside of here in value is just going to be a vec colon new, so an empty vector. Okay. Now, moving on to our trait implementation. Implement messenger for mock messenger. Function send, self, and the message. Self.send messages, borrow mute. So we're telling the RefCell we want to explicitly borrow this as mutable, and then that's going to give us this vector, and then we're going to push into it. So let's see how that looks like. It's going to be self.sent messages dot borrow mute dot, and now this is going to be a vector, so push, and then we want to push string from, and in this case it's going to be the message. And it doesn't have a problem with that. Perfect. Now what's going to happen is it's going to pull this in, give us a mutable reference to it, and then it's going to go out of scope right away. So we're only going to be taken in mutably right at that second, like the microsecond that we're doing this function on. Okay, so implement messenger for mock messenger. Wait, just did that here. Then we have our test. Assert equal mock messenger dot sent messages dot borrow, so dot length 1. So inside of here we have to dot borrow here, and we're only going to borrow normally, like we don't need to borrow mutably, and then check the length. Now why are you upset? Cannot borrow immutable local variable tracker as mutable. I think that set value, are we going to need to mute tracker? Yeah, that should work. Let's run our test. Cargo test. And it works, so everything is just fine there. Before I go on, do I want to change this? Let's go ahead and think about different ways we can do this if statement, because I did promise I wanted to take a look at this. So one of the big things that affects me personally in programming is I'm dyslexic, and one of the big things that hits that and that triggers dyslexia for me is blocks of text that are all sort of close to each other. That's why I like to use things like spacing and white space a lot. It really helps out. And also the names of things, I can be very explicit with that. Sort of like help me remember what exactly is going on, because both when reading this is really tough for me, because this is all feels like, this is where you get that traditional swimming of text that happens with dyslexia. So I kind of want to see if I can clean this up a little bit, which would be, okay, can I make this shorter? Now one way, and the original way I was thinking of, is start with percentage of max. So if percentage of max is greater than or equal to 1.0, it would be really short here, and then I can only just do one check, just like these. I can put these down like this, which might help a little bit. There's some white space in here. But I'm kind of also wondering if maybe I can do, if percentage of max is greater than or equal to 75 and percentage of max is less than 9, I wonder if I can have another function in here and call it. So if I can have a function, and this can be a private function, is get percentage. We'll already have that. So is above 75%. So is above 75%. This is going to take in a F64. So it's going to be percent, which is an F64. And it's going to return a Boolean. And in here, I can just return this. So percent, well, rather, okay. Percentage of max. This is all I'm really doing here, is just say I want to say, okay, I just want to return percent is greater than or equal to 0.75 and percent is less than 0.9, and just return that. Then I can use that here. Is above 75%. And the percent is the percentage of max. And this needs to be a self dot. You expected that you wouldn't need the mute tracker. I thought the idea was that the overall structure is immutable, but somewhere inside, some field needs to be able to change unless we need RefCell. The immutable structure with one or more mutable fields. That's kind of what I was initially thinking too. No method named is above 75, found for type mutable. It's found in the current scope. Found the following associated functions. Try with mute limit tracker. AT is it? Whoa, that's very specific. This is inside the same implementation. Does this need to be it shouldn't need to be above. It should still be able to find it, right? Like, I don't need to do anything crazy like this. Yeah, no, that's what I thought. So what I need to do is run the test again and get the error message. Bunch of errors. Okay, so where does it? Cargo test. All right, here's the beginning. No method named is 75%, found for type mute limit tracker. AT into current scope. If self dot is that, note the following association functions to be used in methods. Function must have a self parameter. Oh, so you need to take in self regardless. So reference to self that. Oh, that's all I needed to do? Okay, well, that's easy. Let's bring you back down. Yeah, so if I don't have the self here, it's not findable. at all. So that's actually really interesting to know. And then the big thing here is that I could create functions for each of these things. The idea is that these are going to be slightly different colors now. This is yellow because it's a function call. And that helps me because it's like the colors are different. And so it keeps my mind, it keeps me on it. However, these are small enough changes that I don't need to do something like that. But if I'm going to create an is above 75%, then it might be better to just create these as functions all together in here. So function is between 75 and 90. Oh no, that's is above 75%. So is above 90%. This takes in a reference to self. It takes in a percent, which is going to be an F64. It's going to return a bool, and then we're going to do the exact same thing here. So percentage of max, cut that out, and just say, okay, this should be percent is less than 1.0. But here I can be more specific. So I can say percent is greater than or equal to 0.9, and percent is less than 1.0. I have to go look at the example to know exactly what's going on there, but the local variable is getting changed, but the struct, so the need to mutable on tracker. Yeah, let me do the last one here, and then we'll go take a look at that. So self is, this is going to be self dot is above 90%, percentage of max, and then we finally have this last one. I'm just going to copy this, and is above 100% is going to be percent greater than or equal to 0.0. And here we can now change this to be self dot is above 100%, percentage of max, and then we do that. So perfect. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's a little bit easier for me to read. It's just like a couple less lines and the colors are changed. And that's like really all I need to be able to actually read this really quickly and not have to concentrate super hard on it. Let's come back down here and take a look. So we were discussing the fact that we need to do this let mute tracker equals limit tracker new messenger. So this is a new limit tracker, which is not set as mutable here. So we need to get a mutable version of this because this set value. Because in this set value, we do self.value equals value because we take a mutable reference to self. I think it's because we take a mutable reference to self. That's the reason why it has to be mutable here. And we're only like, normally you're not allowed to say like, okay, it's mutable and immutable at the same time. The RefCell is sort of kind of allowing us to do that. Which is, it does feel a little bit weird. I think this is going to be one of the things where we just have to let the compiler yell at us. Now, so if I don't have let tracker, if I just do let tracker there, and I don't take a mutable reference to self, just a normal reference to self, cannot assign to field self.value of immutable binding. And so that's the reasons we're updating the value here. Cannot assigned, right? So it's telling it, like, it then tells us we have to do that. The error is up here. So we would then say, okay, we'll make that mutable. That fixes that, but then down here we have this, well, you can't do this without making it mutable. So the we don't have to like necessarily remember exactly how to do that. It's going to be more the compiler will let us know. All right, where were we? I think right here. The sent messages field is now of type RefCell vec string instead of vec string. In the new function, we create a new RefCell vec string instance around the empty vector. Yeah, we are changing local variable object tracker, so that's why we need the mute. If we didn't have that and we were doing like something like just the other stuff, then I don't think we would need the mute. For the implementation of the send method, the first parameter is still an immutable borrow of self, which matches the trait definition. We call borrow mute on the RefCell vec string in self.sentMessages. To get immutable reference to the value inside the RefCell vec string, which is the vector, then we can call push on the immutable reference to the vector to keep track of the messages sent during the test. I have to read that again. That I got lost halfway through there. For the implementation of the send method, the first parameter is still an immutable borrow of self. An immutable borrow of self. So for the implementation of the send method, where's right here, immutable borrow for self, even though we're pushing into here, which matches the trait definition. We call borrow mute on the RefCell vec string in self.sentMessages to get a mutable reference to the value inside the RefCell vec string, which is the vector. Then we can call push on the mutable reference to the vector to keep track of the messages during the test. The last change we have to make is the assertion. To see how many items are in the inner vector, we call borrow on the RefCell vec string to get an immutable reference to the vector. Now that you've seen how to use RefCell, let's dig into how it works. And we are at 7:52, so I don't think we have time to go through all this. So let's begin winding down and set up where we're at. So do and open up VS Code so we can update where we're at here. Okay, so currently at no longer a use case for interior mutability. Now we're at keeping track of borrows at runtime. You get changed to be here. All right, perfect. So that's where we're currently at. Let's update our code. So implemented RefCell for interior mutability while not borrow. I guess like we're not borrowing because we're just taking in a reference while not getting mute. mute self. Okay. Oh, one character over. We'll just do that. And we'll push this on up to GitHub. So let's go check where we're at. All right, so I've got the latest here on the wiki. I have links to the wiki to this GitHub repo. I have links to this repo in the description to the stream, but I'll also I'm gonna put it in here just in case anybody would like to get a direct link to it or can't find it for some reason. It will be archived here. I'm doing these streams every single weekday morning at 7 a.m. Mountain Time for about an hour or so, or basically whenever there's a good stopping point after 7:50 a.m. hits. And that's where we got today. So we were sort of like, I think we answered all the questions, right, that we had about this code. Was there any other, oh, you're still yelling at me for not having anything in here. Were there any other questions that we had about how this was working? Because I have 5 minutes. We can chat about Rust while we wait for the end. I think everything is pretty much making sense now. The idea of that RefCell is that we can, like, it's doing its own structure inside. Well, could you maybe give some examples of when you would use RefCell? I know how to use it, but I can only come up with artificial use cases. So I'm thinking, and this might be like my own, it might be one of those things where like I might have trouble thinking about times to use it also, especially since like trying to come up with these examples and just like from my teaching experience as an instructor, I always screw up by telling students, oh yeah, you don't use it that much, and then later on I was like, yeah, I do, I forgot. So let's take a look here. The biggest thing with RefCell is if I want to not make a structure mutable for some reason, but inside one of the things is mutable. So one thing that comes to mind is maybe a caching pattern. So let's say that I had I wanted to hit an HTTP API, like some web API, and I want to hit it and grab something, and then if I get the same value again, store that. So my favorite example for this would be the Pokemon API. There's a Poke API. The Pokemons aren't changing. Like they're kind of set by the company a long time ago. So I want to go out and say, okay, I want Pokemon number 55. I send a message to get that Pokemon. I get it back. I don't ever need to do that call again. So I should store that in a cached, like in a structure that's cached. But I don't need to, I would only need to like mutate that one part and not everything else. So I think this is where RefCell might come in to sort of push those into another structure. That structure is mutable, stored inside of RefCell. Now I can do these gets. If I don't get anything out of it, I can then go back out to HTTP. That's sort of what I'm thinking. It's one of the things you don't know to use until you ask a question on Reddit, then everyone yells at you saying to use RefCell. I mean, probably that's what it is, which that like the problem of everyone yelling to say like use RefCell is just sad, because I think that encourages people to not ask as many questions. I think it's more of, I think I would take them as like, oh man, you haven't used RefCell? Okay, I've got to show you something. You're gonna love it. Like then move on to that. I think that would be a great way to introduce people to it. Anyways, I don't know if a caching pattern is necessary there. I kind of want to implement something like that just to see whether or not I'd be forced to use RefCell, or if I'm incorrect in my assumption that RefCell would be the best thing to use in that case. And maybe that's something we can do after we work through the book. We're going to be creating an HTTP server, so maybe part of that will be something like that. But until then, it is 7:59, so we have successfully burned the last 5 minutes. It's time for me to get on with my day. As I mentioned earlier, I'm doing these streams every single weekday morning at 7 a.m. Mountain Time for about an hour or so. We're nearing the end of chapter 15, and I think there's 20 or so chapters in total. So we're getting near the end. We're at these higher level, sort of less often used parts of the book, which is pretty awesome. I have a Git repo that has all the code that I've been working on. Those can be found in a stream or video description. I have a wiki there, which we can all update as long as we have GitHub accounts. And also I'm archiving all these videos over to YouTube. That way, when they get deleted from Twitch, there's still some kind of evidence that I learned Rust and that you guys can watch whenever you want. With that, I don't have anything else, so I'm gonna go get ready for the rest of my day. Thank you everybody for stopping by here. This has been super fun going through it, and I can't wait to finish the book and start building interesting things. So with that, I'm gonna turn off the stream. Have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow morning.